Welcome to episode 285 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. There's a lot of talk in our sector about sustainable logistics, the green last mile and all that sort of stuff. But how can it actually be done? Well, my guest in this episode is someone who has done it. My guest is Johan Peeters. He's an expert in sustainable city logistics, and some of you would know Johan as a key player in bpost's EcoZone project. So we're going to talk about the role that logistics and delivery has in creating livable cities and in how we can sort of create this green last mile. A really interesting discussion. So enough from me. Let's get straight into it. Johan Peeters talking about creating the sustainable last mile. Joining me on the line is Johan Peeters. Johan is an expert in sustainable city logistics. Johan, we're going to delve into a really important topic today, which is how a city, or in particular a city centre, can have emission-free delivery. Now, Johan, shall we start with what emission-free delivery might even look like? What do you think emission-free delivery is or can be?
Well, that's a very good question to start with, Ian. Maybe a bit philosophical, because if you look at emissions, they are produced through a full value chain. So to set things straight, when we talk about emission-free delivery, we should correct ourselves and say this is emission-free tailpipe emissions, because that's what we're really talking about. And maybe with a bit of luck, the energy used to charge those emission-free vehicles who are exhaust-free from the tailpipe on do need some electricity. And with a bit of luck, that electricity is also being bought renewable, eliminating also the emissions from the production of electricity. And that brings us to a whole other level of discussions, but maybe we just can frame it to the emission-free tailpipe emissions for the sake of the argument. So to come back to your question, what is the emission-free delivery in the context of cities? We're talking about an emission-free last mile, or even an emission-free just before the last mile from the hub to the delivery.
So, Johan, when we're looking at this question of tailpipe emission-free or whatever kind of green delivery it is, I think we should probably try and give this a bit of context, because cities also talk about concepts like traffic congestion, use of public space, and things like that. So what context would you put emission-free delivery in that?
Yeah, a very good question. I think we can frame it back to two important topics. Like, emissions are basically important because with emissions they're also connected to the fine dust and the particle emissions, which have an impact on our lungs, basically. So that frames in the concept of creating a healthier city. That's one. The other one is a very good one, because the pressure on our cities is huge, meaning lots of traffic in the road, leading to congestions, leading to dangerous situations, leading to conflicts between people using cars, bikes, pedestrians, and that whole concept is creating livable cities. So what we're trying to solve here is maybe a societal problem. If you see world population, half of the world is living into cities. It's always a pendulum swinging back from living more rural to living in urban areas. We're today in the age where we trying to find a balance between those two, but still half of the world is living into cities. And then the question is, how do we create healthier and more livable cities?
So this idea of a healthier and a more livable city, where does a delivery company fit into all of that? A delivery company could just say, well, we respond to what our e-commerce customers want. How does a delivery company fit into this very idea?
Yeah. You should see it from a different perspective, exactly as you frame it, because we have different stakeholders involved. We take up different roles also. We are an inhabitant of a city, and therefore we try to defend livable cities. We want more quality of life. We want to have more green space. We want to have streets where our children can play outside. We want to sit on our bench to have our social context. We want to take a walk after coming back from work or a run in a park. But at the same time, we also like to sit in our sofas at the end of the night, take out our phone and just click and buy the stuff that we need. And preferably, we like them delivered at our doorstep. So that's where the transportation and the e-commerce come into play, because we all need to see and realize that there is basically a change in behavior needed. And as we all know, as we look in the mirror, that's the hardest thing for us as a human being. It's change. And I think that there is a role, you cannot just address the responsibility for that to the transportation company. That's too much to ask, because we are also in charge. We are the ones basically asking for the transportation company to come in our streets and deliver the parcels at our door. And then you would hear some voices saying like, no, a certain percentage of the people says, no, I'm quite happy not to have it delivered at my door. Just give me some options. No, you don't have to drive this polluting car or van into my street. Give me just the other options. And that's also what you see if you look at it from a broader perspective. You see these e-commerce web shops offering sustainable solutions. You see all these companies rising up, which is very good, by the way. And that's where the different stakeholders come in. So you have a kind of a triangle between a consumer, e-commerce player, and then let's say the environment where we operate, in the context where we operate in, and that is shared space between a city and then a transportation company that uses that space to deliver their services.
I just want to go back for a moment. You mentioned earlier about green space, and that might seem to some people listening to this to be outside of any conversation a delivery company needs to have. But you mentioned about how we in the delivery world are also part of the city as individuals and as a company. So what's the value of green space, and why should a delivery company care about it?
Without any green space, the pre-assumption there is that people will not longer live into cities or want to live into cities. So cities try to operate with public, they try to create this kind of green zones, green corridors. If you see the trend going towards the new cities that we all like, are these car-free cities with a lot of water parties, with a lot of green, with kind of a walkable structure, as we saw introduced by the mayor of Paris, 50-minute cities, but also the new cities that we see in the Middle East rising, like CO2 neutral kind of cities. All those images that are created into future images are those type of, maybe some back to the past, the way we used to live into the medieval cities. Things are walkable, close by, social context, etc. Where do we play a role as what is the importance of this for a delivery company? Basically, the company exists because they want to deliver a service. And you have to realize as a company that if this is the trend of a city development, you need to organize yourself so that your services can still be provided into the future. So if the general trend is we will no longer allow vehicles, or first step, we will no longer allowed combustion engines into our cities, you need to adapt, you need to change. If the next step is we will no longer, and that's what we are seeing in different cities, we will no longer allow cars, so that we create car-free zones. We create zones where priority is given to the cyclists and the pedestrians. Then you also need to adapt and you need to change, because you can no longer keep doing what you always have been doing, and that's getting some parcels in a van. You need to change the way of working, basically. And that's why it's important for those delivery companies, because if you don't change your way of working, in the end you will run out of business, or a competitor will rise up who does do the delivery in a car-free way through soft mobility, and you see a lot of those companies are rising successfully.
Let's go back then to what you're saying about changing consumer behaviour, and you sort of hinted at the idea that customers like their parcels, their purchases being delivered to their doorstep. So, how does this delivery preference fit into the concept of creating livable cities and the role of delivery companies in creating livable cities?
Yeah. In that triangle, we face a few challenges. On the one hand, as a consumer, we want to have the best customer experience, basically. We want things to go smoothly, very easy going, and we also like to receive very convenient solutions. And that's where the tricky part comes in, because convenience means, in different contexts, for different persons, different things. What is convenient for you might not be convenient for me, and what's convenient for me might not be convenient for you. And then we also have to take into account that we don't all possess the same abilities. Some people might be a bit restricted in their mobility, so we also need to take that into account. So convenient solutions is a broad array. That's one thing. The best customer experience is something we all want. And then the third one is, how should I call it? Try to gain sustainable profits from doing business. And that's a very difficult topic to discuss, because as an e-commerce player, we own a certain value chain. And within that value chain, profits are taken basically globally. But to frame it in another way, the shit, so to say, is being produced locally. And the shit that we are seeing or feeling as a consumer, and at the same time an inhabitant, is then again framed within pollution, congestion, and everything that goes with it. So where do we come in as a delivery company? In a very harsh position sometimes, because we're pressured by the e-commerce shops that are taking sometimes more profit than that they want to share. So there is a real cost of delivery weighing down to wages, weighing down to the social aspect of the people employed in the delivery company. So it's very hard for them to keep in business, at the same time being very competitive for parcel delivery prices. So the sustainable profits there should be shared in some kind of way. And the enabler for all of this could be a city, because they have the power to put some certain restrictions, or put positively regulations into how a city is being run, and what the rules are to provide your services into this arena of a sustainable city.
So, continuing then on this theme of creating a sustainable city, you mentioned earlier about the value of green space. And when you're talking about the value of green space and making cities livable, it will then therefore attract residents. So, then I suppose my question is going to be, what solutions do we in the delivery world offer, or should we offer, to enable green space, to accommodate cities' desires to create car-free zones or things like that? I mean, if you're a postal operator and you've got an entire legacy network of post offices and delivery vans and delivery bikes and trucks and everything like that, what first steps should you be taking?
Yeah, very good question. I'm gonna put some ideas out there, and let's see what sticks. What I saw from the experience in working with those with the legacy of postal companies is that it's very reassuring to find out that everything already has been done some point in time. and that there is a lot of experience within those companies, especially very valued employees that are already working 30 years and 25 years in those companies. So have a chat with those people. That will be my first advice, because what I found out is that the old structure of sending letters was basically a kind of a social enabler, and to be able to give everyone the advantage of communicating, keeping in touch with each other. They said, like, we need to have this dense network of mailboxes and post offices so that we foremost make sure that everyone has access to these points. And what you saw there is that it became an idea of density, which is later on translated into drop density when we shift to parcels, because that's how our world has been shifted. And if you look at that concept, it really comes down to that. If you create an opportunity of a densible possibilities, you see a lot of solutions answering to that question. And what are those? Like, you have to have maybe an alternative for a door if you want to avoid a lot of let me split it up. Vehicles. If you want to avoid the vehicles, you have to shift to soft mobility. But then if you have a lot of density and you want to do everything by a bike, a cargo bike with a bike trailer, etc., you have to have volume. Volume means drop density again. Then you have to rethink your routing. Then you have to make sure that your smaller volume, because you're talking about a few cubic meters less than a van, then you have to provide the same efficiency. So you might need to have a micro hub installed so that that your city hub is not too far from the point where you need to drop off your parcel. And that is a connection of a dense network. So you see these models arising where you say, like, okay, when is it profitable to use this type of soft mobility? Oh, maybe as from 3 to 5 kilometers from a city center or an area where we need to deliver. But then we also need to have one big van, emission-free, of course, going to a certain point, micro hub, where those bikes can return and refill their cargo space to drop off the parcels. Why? Because we need the drop density in our routing to have an employee doing its work efficiently. That's the vehicle part. And then from the consumer part, we come back to the convenient solution with the best customer experience, because that's what you as an e-commerce player want to offer, but also as a service provider, you want happy people. You want them to say, like, okay, you gave me a great service and it was awesome, and I could pick up and deliver my parcel on my convenience. And that convenience can be the doorstep. Why not? If a non-intrusive vehicle comes to your street and deliver your parcel, that's quite okay. But at the same time, if you have to have bigger parcels or delivery at your door and you have 5 vans driving to the same point, you might want to avoid that. So what is the inconvenience? Sometimes convenience for me is just walking a few hundred meters to a parcel locker. And what we saw there is that, or let me put it broader, a pickup or a drop-off point. And what we saw there through some interesting studies is that the ideal distance to cover is within 400 meters. So if you install those possibilities within 400 meters of each doorstep, you see people changing their behavior. Why? Because it's more convenient for them and it gives a superb customer experience. The anxiety of waiting is gone. You can do it on your own terms. You can even have a walk when you're working at home. And all those benefits go hand in hand with the sustainable character that we are striving for. Meaning that if you have to fill up a PUDO points, you probably can drop off more parcels at the same time. So meaning your drop density goes up, so your efficiency goes up, so you are creating bigger streams with more volume and less stops. So it all connects to each other, but you have to think very carefully about your network design and where to place those points. And that is all connected to the drop density. So it's always a question of demand, basically.
Johan, after all of that, I'm sure there are postal and delivery executives, as well as probably city planners, who are thinking, I need to know more. I need to talk to Johan to find out more. How can people get in contact with you?
Yeah. Very easy. You can just connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can just send me an email that is johan.peters@fisherman.be.
So I'll stick a link to Johan's LinkedIn profile on thepostalhub.com. So you can just click through there and send him a message through LinkedIn and see if you can take something from there. It's a hugely important topic. We might be only part of the e-commerce chain, Johan, but we in the delivery world need to future-proof our business. If you want to put it in dollars and cents terms, we need to be good custodians of the planet, if you want to put it in sustainability terms. And I think that without a doubt, we can be a positive contributor to the idea of livable cities. So anyway, enough from me. And please do follow up with Johan, everybody, if you want to find out more about this really important topic. Johan Peeters, thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Ian.
That's all for this episode of the Postal Hub podcast. Please do subscribe to the podcast on your favourite podcast platform so that you get every episode downloaded to your device as and when it's released. There will be a few new episodes coming up. I've got one featuring a range of speakers talking about some of the key trends we're going to be seeing coming up in 2023 in the postal and delivery world. So stay tuned for that one. Now, I just mentioned subscribing to the podcast in a podcast platform. You can subscribe to my email newsletter as well. Go to thepostalhub.com and follow the links to subscribe to the newsletter. You can also subscribe to the Daily Delivery Digest, which is what you might think it is. It's a daily email with the news headlines from around the delivery world. If you're on LinkedIn, you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow the Postal Hub podcast on LinkedIn. Just look us up, follow us. It'll make your LinkedIn feed so much nicer. I can't guarantee that, actually, but let's just pretend that it's true. What else? If you want to email me, which is the best way to get in contact with me, my email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.